That's where we're going, Menkaure's pyramid, to check out the remarkable granite casing stones.
You know, you talk about a razor blade is far too thick to get into these seams.
We come to the sarcophagus chamber, barrel-shaped roof made of granite blocks, and the barge on which the sarcophagus was sank.
Here we are at Menkaure's pyramid, and you can see the remarkable granite casing stones. You've got nubs here, you've got like the puffy polygonal stonework, and it would have gone up multiple courses, probably some people say 16 courses, and then with an interior of limestone. And this is just astonishing when you think about it. So it would have had all this way up with this red granite, and then white, perfect carved limestone, you know, high quality limestone all the way to the top. So it's just absolutely amazing. It's just like being in ancient Peru, and you really got to check this out. But these nubs as well, we saw these at Casa El Saga, we see them in Peru, we see them in many different places around the world. So it's a real treat to be here. Also we see the difference between where it's been smoothed off and where it's still puffy polygonal. So there's this whole area where the kind of entrance has been made, all these cellars sort of hang out, which has this smoothness. And then you just compare it with this. I mean, is this unfinished or is this deliberate? I really get a sense there's a deliberate kind of styling here, because you've got nubs on it, you've got shaping on it. You've got to look that there's black and there's red granite here. It's not just red granite actually, it's like black and red granite, all combining to create this sort of artistic, abstract design that would cover probably, some people say 8, some people say up to 16 levels of Menkaure's pyramid. And it is just one of the most fascinating parts of the Giza plateau.
I was just going to talk about the entrances for the pyramids, because these are claimed to be tombs, and therefore the entrance and the chambers were supposed to be secret, so nobody could plunder the tombs and take away the gold and wealth and the mummy of the pharaoh. I don't believe this is true at all, because if you see here, this we believe is original. The entrance to this pyramid is marked very clearly by the smoothing of the granite blocks. So everybody throughout ages would have known where the entrance to this pyramid was. So nobody was keeping this a secret. So these entrances were probably open throughout history. And when we get down to the Great Pyramid, on the north side, you can see the entrance there. That was open during Roman times, because we have a comment from Strabo. Strabo says that if you go slightly up on the north side of the pyramid, you will find a stone which can be pulled out. So it had a stone block as a door, from which you can go down a passageway which takes you to the dungeon at the bottom, or the cave, I think he called it, which is a very good description, of course, of the rough cave that lies at the bottom of the Great Pyramid. But of course, at that time, the upper chambers were completely concealed. You couldn't find them, you couldn't see them, because there were blocks concealing them. Why do it like this? Well, I think it was an anti-theft device in a way. Why plunder a pyramid that you know is already open and there's nothing in it, because you can go down there. So there's no point trying to look for other chambers in the Great Pyramid, because it's already open. But the kings and queens chambers above were concealed, carefully concealed, so you didn't know where they were. But I think they were probably empty anyway. I don't think anyone was buried there. I think this was a story of the empty tomb again. If you go into any Christian cathedral, the central part of any cathedral is the empty tomb, which we normally call an altar. So the altar at which people officiate is essentially, it's a tomb, it's a sarcophagus. and it represents the risen Jesus, of course. So it's part of the dying and rising gods once more. And I think that's exactly what they had in the Great Pyramid and these pyramids as well. So the tombs would have been empty because they weren't tombs.
So all what we have around us here is nothing but the leftover of recycling, and beside, of course, the amount that they took. It just shows us that there is a big possibility that more than these 18 courses was encased with this granite stone.
Yeah, get up here. See, this is a really good example of the seams. It's probably almost too hard to see. There's some erosion that makes it seem like the gap is opening, but it's not. Look right there. You know, you talk about a razor blade is far too thick to get into these seams. And the stones deep into it too are all, it's not just the front surface that is exquisitely fit. And once again, this is red granite from Aswan. Yeah, so 500 kilometers away. So transportation and then the working of granite is like shaping glass. And the mark of the megalithic builders around the world you have here, like you have these puffy polygonal walls that have knob-like protrusions that you find in Peru. And the esoteric traditions are that the megalithic race was a global construction endeavor, and they have the same techniques. And you find like the key cuts in Egypt and then the key cuts in Peru. So this is more engineering, stonework, and geological evidence that you see for a greater antiquity. You got to come again and get this right here. Like right there is the best example. There's miles and miles of these seams, or whatever you want to call them. They're almost not seams, they're so tight. So that's what strikes me, is the precision.
A passage, a tunnel that runs above the tunnel exactly, that leads to the same chamber. And it makes us wonder, this tunnel ends with a chamber behind the stones. And when you look for the official explanation, they assume that the pyramid was enlarged. And for that, they need to make another lower passage, because otherwise the passage was going to be on a higher spot than that. Not much higher, by the way, a few meters only. I see no problem with it, but yeah, there is another passage that leads all the way and ends with a chamber underneath the casing stone.
We're just about to enter the third pyramid of Giza, attributed to the pharaoh Menkaure, constructed about 2550 BC. So let's see what we find inside. This is what we might call the descending passage, but in many ways it is actually the ascending passage, because it's for the soul of the pharaoh to actually come out of the pyramid and go to the sky world, which was in the north, among the circumpolar stars, the stars that never set. And this was part of a death journey, which is recorded just after this time in the pyramid texts. And they tell us that the pharaoh would go first to the west, then they would go underground through the so-called Duat, or underworld, and they would come out on the eastern horizon, rise up to Orion, where they would then link with the Milky Way, the so-called winding waterway, and then they would go north along the Milky Way towards Osiris's mother's embrace, which was in the northern part of the sky, where he would become at one with her womb again and be reborn into the afterlife. And this is what this passage is all about. It's about his route out of the pyramid, basically. Obviously we have this style here, which has often been compared with Mesopotamia, and possible influence coming in during the Old Kingdom, an influence in the decorative style of the architecture of the period. So we'll carry on. Now let's go beneath this lintel here, which is clearly made of like a black granite. Obviously the walls here are made of limestone. And let's see what we got further on. And this is the first chamber that we come to. And quite clearly it continues on. We're descending still further, but now note that we're going towards the west. And obviously we have to look at it in terms of the pharaoh's journey in death. He would be coming out of here, going towards the east and rising up to the stars of Orion before they turn quite literally left to go towards the stars of the northern part of the sky. And this is what this journey actually is. It is the route of the soul in death. Originally in the west, then going east, and then turning at right angles and going towards the north. And that's why that's the ascending passage, even though we ourselves would see it in terms of a descending passage. We're here now in the sarcophagus chamber of Menkaure's pyramid. You can see it's got this incredible barrel-shaped roof made of granite blocks. In fact, the whole interior is made of granite, and I wouldn't mind betting that there are quite special acoustic properties in here, just like there are within the King's Chamber itself. And that would suggest that you probably got some kind of geometry relating to musical intervals here. And that should quite easily be defined.
The shape of the roof, that's going to be something, isn't it?
Yeah, look at the shape of the roof above us. It's barrel-shaped. And of course, these granite blocks that make this barrel roof have actually placed within the limestone bedrock itself. So in other words, this chamber has been created in its entirety inside the actual bedrock. The sarcophagus was put on a barge and taken to Europe, but as it was going through the Mediterranean, there was terrible storms, and the barge on which the sarcophagus was sank, and it's never ever been discovered. So it's still somewhere in the Mediterranean to this day, the sarcophagus that was once in this chamber. What happened to the coffin? I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure, but all I know is that there is a debate over whether it was put inside the sarcophagus perhaps at a much later period from the 4th dynasty, perhaps as late as the Saitic period, maybe around 600 BC. Nobody really knows, and the contention is the fact that it mentions Osiris. If it is contemporary with Menkaure, that would be the oldest reference that we have to Osiris, the god, basically, which the pharaoh became in death. And once the pharaoh became Osiris in death, it was his duty and his destiny to return back to the womb of his mother, his cosmic mother, and that was Nuit. Nuit represents the sky, the Milky Way, but her womb and vulva area correspond with the constellation of Cygnus, where the Milky Way splits into two separate streams. And this was seen as a point of entrance or exit to the sky world in many different cultures, not only in the Eurasian continent and Africa, but also in the Americas. And what you have here in Egypt is a part of that tradition, the same tradition, really, that we have at Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. It's all part of the same original source material that probably goes back to Paleolithic times. We're now above the actual sarcophagus chamber of Menkaure's pyramid, and you can actually see here what appears to be the creation of the barrel-shaped roof that we have just been down and seen. And you can see these interesting scoop marks on the top of these granite blocks. And this is something that you see a lot, particularly in the quarries at Aswan, perhaps in connection with the the unfinished monolith there. You see these scoop marks. I mean, how exactly they create them, we don't know. But clearly this was part of the process of manufacturing these blocks from the raw bedrock. We're just outside of the sarcophagus chamber of Menkaure's pyramid. This is the limestone that's been cut as they've gone through the bedrock. But we can see that there are other chambers and areas that we can't explore because they're locked. You can see here another chamber. This is slightly lower than the one we've just been in. It's got alcoves in it. These alcoves suggest that they would have had statues of gods in them, or perhaps even certain divine ancestors. But they've all gone now, and clearly this is locked, so we can't actually go inside. So here's granite here. We've got granite here at the end of this passage, just before you get into the sarcophagus chamber. But I'm going to say I'm not sure whether that is original or it was placed there. It probably is original, but it's obviously been conveniently used as the end of a stair rail now. But okay, we're going to go back out of the pyramid. Right, we've just come out of Menkaure's pyramid, and we've just looked at all the different features.
Then when we come around the northeastern side, we see that this mortuary temple and this facing on the pyramid remarkably blends with the bedrock. The granite blends into the bedrock, it blends into the floor. It really is quite astonishing. So we'll have a quick look at this. And we have Youssef and other guest speakers talking about it as well. But I want to just show you this because the sun's going to be on it perfectly right now.
Most of the recycling was transforming the stones into objects that they can use, like millstones. Here is an almost finished millstone.
So over there we have the puffy polygonal stonework. You can see there where it blends into the limestone and into this remarkable mortuary temple with gigantic limestone blocks. If you come into the mortuary temple itself and then we head back towards the pyramid, you'll see what I mean. You can just about see it through there, but you get better examples here. Here we go. So look, you've actually got, like we saw with the basalt casing around the Great Pyramid, we actually have this beautiful granite flooring, which blends, it literally blends with the kind of lower levels of the pyramid itself. I love this. I think this is absolutely remarkable. Because granite is not easy stone to work with, so the fact they've gone to so much effort here is absolutely amazing. This is where it gets really interesting around the kind of eastern side of Menkaure's pyramid. And you can just see behind me, you can see this delightful polygonal granite stonework combined with the kind of puffy polygonal style all in one area, like we find on the southern side as well. So it's just a real treat to have no one here. They built this platform in, they must be doing some restoration, but it means we get this amazing view while we're here. So again, on this side, over here, you see we have the puffy polygonal, then it combines, it blends into the flat area. So there's a whole section here as well that does the same as it does on the main entrance. So what does this mean? Is it unfinished or is it deliberate? That is the question.
Again, according to the official story, Shepseskaf, the successor of Menkaure, was responsible of finishing this pyramid because Menkaure passed before his time and they needed to finish the burial anyway. Shepseskaf had a priest who was responsible here about this work. His name is Ra'wer. And Ra'wer's tomb is here in the Giza plateau, but Shepseskaf's tomb is the one between Saqqara and Dahshur. There is a huge mastaba over there. This is the one for Ship's Scarf. The other thing, Ra, his tomb here is reflecting the reuse of stones from ancient structures. So the priest that was supposedly finishing this was actually using stones in his tomb from older structures.
And then the mortuary temple of Khafre's pyramid, look at these gigantic limestone blocks, like similar to the mortuary temple of Khafre's pyramid, which we have over there in the distance, but these are massive. Look at these. There's this beautiful black basalt here, probably from the mountains we looked at. You can see the quality of the stonework right here.
To house this piece of granite here, they created this cavity. You see that? Some pieces are not as thick as the others. So if we have these stones with more cavities of this, then we would know that there used to be granite and then they dismantled it. Exactly like what we see here. But when we see the blocks look like that, especially, these are the same marks we find where they extracted the stones from the bedrock itself. See the indentations in the blocks? These are the ones, these are the figures you see on the wall when you know that there used to be a casing stone and somebody removed it. But look at the severe erosion on both sides, on the lower part. And this is odd because we look at the erosion on the higher part and we know that the entire site was once filled with rubble, except for these higher parts. But according to what I learned from my teacher, Susan Moore, the geologist, she looked at this and she said, this looks closer to water erosion.
Yeah.
These ones. So, look where we are.
How can it be that?
How can water reach up here?
They were pumping it up then. It must have been.
That's more like something flooded the entire site.
I was going to mention that this type of erosion is not necessarily water erosion. I know one of the geologists has said this is water erosion. But this type of erosion is very frequent in hot climates where you get heating and cooling of the rock, and then wind erosion that pushes which erodes the rocks into this sort of pattern. You see it, well, you see it on the Sphinx where you get these layers. Instead of vertical erosion, you see these layers of erosion. And you get it in the Grand Canyon and Chaco Valley and other places like that, where you see exactly this type of erosion. But of course in Chaco Valley, that erosion takes place over tens of thousands of years, not over 600 years or even 4,000 years. Some of the erosion, in Death Valley and so on, that's taken place over millions of years. And you get this type of erosion. But you don't get this erosion over 4,000 years, especially as most of this was originally covered. We'll see around the corner where it's been covered by granite or basalt. If this was covered with a roof on top of it, whatever, because this was a sacred space, there would be no erosion while this was in use. Call it for a couple of thousand years. So it's only started eroding since this place has been abandoned. And you get this amount of erosion, which is unlikely over a few thousand years, highly unlikely.
So I just wanted to show you Menkaure's pyramid, just so you can get a sense of one of the pyramids on the Giza plateau. So I hope you enjoyed the quick visit. Check out our next tour. We always come here, check out all the details other tours might miss, and see all the other videos we produced on ancient Egypt. Thanks for watching Megalithomaniacs, and I'll see you next time.